Welcome to About Face Theatre presents 5 Questions With, and today's guest, Gerry Stembridge. Gerry is an award-winning writer and director who has worked extensively in theatre, film, television, and radio. His plays include That Was Then, Ceausescu's Ear, and The Gay Detective, while he has directed numerous productions for the Abbey, as well as at the Gaiety and the Olympia, among others. On screen, his films as a director include Guiltrip, About Adam and Alarm, while his screenwriting credits include Nora and Ordinary Decent Criminal. On top of that, Gerry is also a best-selling novelist and was the co-creator of the legendary radio comedy series Scrap Saturday. Gerry, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have to, in the interests of anyone who knows me answering this, I only have to correct you on one small point. I know everybody describes themselves as a best-selling novelist. I'm afraid I was never a best-selling novelist. I wish I was. If I was a best-selling novelist, I wouldn't be giving you the time of day. So I was a moderately selling novelist, but that doesn't sound as good, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't.
And Gerry was a moderately selling novelist.
Hey, we'll take it. We'll take it. It's good to have you here anyways.
Thank you very much.
And so we're just going to jump into the questions. And so the first question is just, what play or experience first got you into theatre?
Okay, that's an easy one.
Nothing to do with novels.
Despite the fact that I went to a Christian Brothers school, which had no kind of theatrical activity going on in it at all, and it was a single sex school. It was there. It happened because in 5th year, the brother who somewhat curiously taught maths and physics decided to have a night. He was one of the few teachers who really encouraged us to go to college, believe it or not. In my school down in Limerick at the time, the big encouragement was to get into the civil service and the banks and start earning money straight away and be useful to the economy, and not go to college and have ideas above your station and too much smartness about you and all that. But this particular brother was very keen on college, and so he'd organized a kind of a university night for parents and for previous students who had gone to college, who would come back, and you could meet them and mingle and get to talk about the college experience. And he decided to provide some entertainment, and the entertainment he decided was weirdly that he deconstructed Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. Well, no, that deconstructed is the wrong word. He edited Twelfth Night into a kind of a half-hour highlight story of it. It was my so you know, those of us in the class, we got to one poor. There was one poor boy in 1st year who had to play Maria. But the rest of us were safely kept in our own genders. Anyway, I got, again, you won't be that surprised, the part of Sir Toby Belch. And I realized how delighted I was to get it, and I realized how much I enjoyed it. And I felt not only felt good about it, but I felt I was good at it. And I thought, God, I like this. This is this is something I could do, and I could tell from the way, you know, in Limerick people don't give compliments, as you know. That's almost like a show of weakness in order to do that. But you could sense from people that they were, you know, that they're it's good, it's kind of good, like, you know, geez, no, I never thought, like, anyway. So and so I can directly attribute it. I mean, it would probably have happened anyway, but I can, in a way, attribute to that the confidence with which, when I went to college in UCD in 1976, one of the first things I did in Freshers Week was to go down to Dramsock and join. And that then became the route. It became a huge part of my college life. And it just, you know, it just kind of went there. And actually, one of the interesting things about, because nowadays people go to drama schools, you know, and they get I have to say, I was, you know, probably because of my experience, I was always greatly in favor of if people are going to go to college anyway and do some other course or do something else or do something that would, you know, widen their area of interests, and that things like Dramsock can provide that particular strain I do understand though that I mean, for example, back then in UCD, the Irish Times used to review the college productions, which doesn't happen now. So regularly, you know, and you know, we love it, but it became like an almost normal thing. That somebody would come out from the Irish Times and there'd be a review, and it would be a proper review because sometimes they were scathing. And I remember years later meeting a guy now unfortunately no longer with us, Kane Archer, who was the reviewer for the Irish Times, who mainly did the college thing. He was the kind of second string. He wasn't the most important reviewer, but he went all the time. And I remember when I was already working in the theatre in my early 20s, and I said, how did you bear all those college productions? I said, because some of them were absolute. I mean, we ourselves thought some of them were absolutely vile. And he's like, it was the most memorable thing. He said, well, you know, any night at the theatre, there's always something good. And I look for that, he said, you know, and be it a moment, be it a little, you know, bit of character behavior, be it an acting performance, be it a touch in the lighting. And so he was quite happy to put up with 90% rubbish within a show. But then every so often he saw really good, and you know, quite a few people went. Anyway, that's a long answer, but it was fifth year, Sir Toby Belch, maths and physics teacher, pointing the finger saying, you do that and we'll have a good night out.
Fantastic.
Well, great, Gerry. So then a deconstructed version of Twelfth Night was an influence, but what's a great play that you love and why?
You know, and I talk about, and of course, I obviously excluded my own straight away, you know, because you know, modesty, and I thought, you know, what a bit great, and actually there were a couple of Irish plays I thought, and you know, very often I notice with writers that this goes right through, you know, novelists, playwrights, whenever they're asked to mention their favorite, these would be Irish writers, they never ever mention another Irish writer, which is you know, it's always some, you know, Russian novelist or Danish or German playwright from the 18th century. You know, there's always something like that. So and I'm kind of going to do the same. I will give honourable mention to Tom Murphy because I'll be mentioning him later in relation to something else and to some particular theatrical experiences. But but actually, I would have to say, because again, it was around that time in fifth year that I first saw it, admittedly, though on television. But then subsequently, I remember I did a kind of extended essay on it in college, and then finally I actually played in it in a college production, which I like to believe was one of the better ones. And it's a good old-fashioned play, and it's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? And it was really, I suppose I'm choosing it because it had such an enormous effect on me at exactly that time when I was thinking about plays. And you know, it is just a great, and I saw it again recently. I actually saw an amateur production, and I went to it with some trepidation because I thought, you know, it's a long play, 4 actors, it is really intense. I'm looking at a couple who might, you know, have notions of themselves of playing George and Martha at some point in their lives. Though of course you're far too young at this point.
Oh yes, far too young.
But anyway, but I went to see this amateur production, and it captured me again. They were luckily it was very good. They really understood it, and I really got lost in the play again. And it's just a marvelous night of people going at each other, and it's been imitated so many times in so many other plays. And there would be a younger generation who will go and see Virginia Woolf and said, "Oh, that's just like 10 other plays that they might have seen before," but they don't know this was the mammy and daddy of them all. You know, this is that. You know, the unity of space and time, people locked together in a single room, savaging each other with some secret that's going out. You know what I mean? It's great stuff, and it had a huge effect on me when I saw it, particularly actually in relation to acting, because the first time I saw it it wasn't an amateur group, it was Liz Taylor and Burton. But as a, you know, it is always a play which you know, actors can just take on and seize. And also I have to say it taught me that despite the, we are, because of our geography, we grew up with the huge influence and the huge, shall I say, self-importance of British theatre and everything good that British theatre has done, and like everything else, like football and cricket, they claim to have invented it practically, because of Shakespeare. But the American theatrical tradition is fantastic, and particularly in the 20th century, you're just like O'Neill and Miller and all these great writers. So my pick to send people off to have a read of it if they haven't read it would be Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Brilliant. Now, can you tell us about a time in your theatrical life where, I mean, obviously, even just sometimes attending a play that you expect, maybe, you were talking about the amateur production, will it live up? That's a nice surprise that the play still held up. But can you tell us about a time in your theatrical life where something turned out differently than you expected?
I'll tell you a story which was very, very significant for my theatrical career, and involved me doing something quite bad, actually. So I was 1992. I was commissioned to write a play for a very good company at the time called Wet Paint, who is kind of specialized loosely in theatre and education. But they didn't go around schools or anything like that. They were, a theatre company put it on. But anyway, they commissioned me. They were going to actually pay me, and the means was for me to workshop with a group of actors, who I did. However, they did also indicate in it, because I had been writing and directing already, that they would have a different director. And because they wanted to keep that separate, so I thought, yeah, fine, that's good. I'll go with that. So we did the workshops, and I sat down and wrote a play, and the play was called Love Child, and I was really pleased with it. I was really pleased with how it worked out, and it was a very kind of a play of the moment, next thing they said today, and I gave it to them, and they were very pleased. And then kind of the next communication I got, the phone call I got, they had chosen the director. Now, I was a bit put out at this, because I thought, okay, I'd accepted that there was going to be a different director. I thought there would be some conversation about it. I thought there would be some, who do you like? Who do we like? And I felt a bit bad, because they clearly had the director in mind, but chose not to mention him to me for whatever reason. I don't know. And every director knows everybody else anyway. But it was probably to do with an element of control or something like that. They just wanted to keep all they wanted to be the people in the middle. Anyway. As it also happened, however, I did think, this is so typical about it, I did think this was not a suitable director for the play. And the specific reason for it was because the play dealt with very serious subjects, principally abortion. It came out of the X case at the time, but was also very funny. I like to think so. And that this required a really good balance, that the comedy was absolutely vital to how the play should work. And that it needed, because I wanted it not to be a kind of sad tale of victimization. I wanted it to be a celebration of something, a celebration of choice, a celebration of all that kind of stuff. So it was really key to me. And one of the things I already knew about this director is that he was a very intense, serious director. And so I was very concerned about that. So it was already in my head. And then we all met. Cast himself was for our first kind of reading of the thing, and I left with a heavy heart, thinking, "Oh God, it's going to be so serious. He's going to suck the comedy out of this play, or at least not, because it's not, he was a very good director. Not that he done a great job in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, but you know what I mean." So. I thought about this for a day or two, and came to a really big decision, and I phoned them, and they had already given me, if you like, the first half of my fee, and I gave back the fee and said, sorry, I'm taking my ball away. you know, if this is the setup, we can't do it. So okay, so it was a very bad thing to do, because I was effectively breaking the contract. It did involve me giving up money, and it did involve me not knowing anything about what might happen. There was no, you know, it wasn't like I was already talking to somebody. I had conversation with somebody else and said, you know, we can. So I'm giving myself an out for this, but and then the unexpected thing is that, and I will name the then young woman, not quite so young now, involved a woman called Annette Clancy. Who was kind of peripherally involved in theatre, and she was doing administration work and so on. She now lectures in UCD, but she heard the story on the grapevine, and she contacted me, and because she'd heard what the play was about. And this was interesting, and she asked, could she have a read of it? And I said, yeah, sure, of course you can. And she came back to me and she said, I'd really like to produce this play. And so I was like, I mean, generally completely surprised. I wouldn't have thought to ring her and say, will you produce? She had never produced a play. She worked in theatre administration, but what was particularly significant was that she saw straight away the play needs to be put on now, because it is so much of this moment and of this time. And in fact, there was one of those regular, remember when we had regular abortion referendums? There was so there was one due, which was going to be about the right to travel and the right to all these in the early 90s. You're far too young. But anyway, and so she really thought this play needs to go on before that happens. You know what I mean? And off she went. Fiat McAneil was the next person to come and become involved in the project, and he agreed to let us have the theatre for 6 weeks, which is very long now. You know, for 6 weeks on a percentage basis. So there was no cost to that. And I forget how we arranged the payment of the actors. I may have paid them myself for rehearsal, and then I can't remember. Either way, the actors were paid. Whether so, it wasn't shares or anything like that. They were, you know, we decided we can't do this, and you know, just on a wing and a prayer if we're going to have the actors involved. And in fact, interestingly, I will say also, Rachel, myself, I of course asked the original group of people who've been involved in the workshop, but one of them really thought I had done the wrong thing, and he was supportive of White Paint to the production company, and he refused to get involved. But as is the way with actors, he was very easily recast. It has to be. It was very easy to find another actor who had no such qualms whatsoever about the thing. So, like, is that unexpected enough for you? But the more unexpected thing is that it became the Project Art Centre. It was so successful. It had, and you may wonder, how does this come about? It had more than, across the 6 weeks, it had more than 100% capacity. The reason for that being that the project had a capacity, but such was after the first week or so, such was the demand for tickets that they started to squeeze in extra seats. So it was bulging every night, and it was the most fantastic run, because of course it was like you know, I mean, true propaganda theatre, you know, true, that it was very much, you could feel it in the audience, the kind of liberal agenda people who were all going. And this is the time when that issue and the X case had been so important, and the case. And I even remember how you warmed, and this is where I want to make a point about the comedy of it, that I decided when we're just, I mean, literally just when we were in the tech and what we had to do, that I would change the fire announcement. You know, the normal fire announcement. And what you need to know, because the gag was so much of the moment, but that in this referendum, it was one of these where you were given 4 choices. As in, it was like 4 different questions that you could answer yes or no to. And one was about the right to travel, one was about, you know, all of this, the right to information, right to this. So all I did with the fire announcement was, good evening, welcome to Project Art Centre. Here's the fire announcement. You have 4 options to exit the theatre. And the audience laughed straight away.
Nice.
The audience was laughing before the play started. And so I got my wish for a production where people laughed and cheered and enjoyed, and yet got through that really serious subject. And another moment I remember that the audience hugely enjoyed was the young female character in it was searching for the number for abortion information. And so she ended up in a public toilet, and she said, there was this number. And I can't quite remember it now, but she said, there was 6799344. And she said, what's that number? 6799344. That sounds familiar. 6799344. And every time she said the number, because at that point it was illegal. It was before the referendum, so at that point it was illegal. And so in this kind of young innocent actress, the faux innocent, doing her, you know, and again the audience just loved that, just loved how that went. And so I've never regretted. I never regretted doing it. I never regretted it, but it could just as easily have happened if it wasn't for Annette Clancy, actually. Because I had no notions of, I had no idea of what I didn't feel, and you know, I didn't feel almost like people would want to touch it because of the history behind it. So you know what it was I had done to it. So if it, you know, Annette Clancy made this happen, absolutely made this happen. And anyway, there you go.
That's fabulous.
That's great. Yeah. So Gerry, you talked there about a really.
Sorry, by the way, I just want to add into that.
Yeah.
But it has also convinced me in everything I've done since about the importance of producers.
Yeah.
Well as you know, sometimes people, you know, talk of producer people outside as kind of some kind of, you know, oh, I don't know, pimple on the arts of theatre. Terrible image, but anyway, but you know, producers are so important, and creative producers are really, it's a vital part of the collaboration.
Okay, so Gerry, so you have worked extensively in film, television, radio, and you're even a moderately selling novelist. But what keeps you coming back to the theatre? What moves you? What excites you about theatre?
Okay, it's very easy. And actually, this is where I mentioned the Gaiety concert, because if you don't go to it, you miss it. And it's the only thing, and more in this world. I mean, I grew up in a world where if something was on television, you also missed it, as in, you know, it's very unlikely to be repeated, or it certainly wasn't available in any other form. And so people were, but nowadays, everything is readily available to you. And in fact, but you know, perhaps slightly unfortunately because of the pandemic, even theatrical experiences can now be available to you time and time again, you know, which has because it is taking away the absolutely unique feature now that if you were not there, then you don't get to see it. And this a simple example of it is one of the great first nights I was ever at was of Tom Murphy's The Gaiety concert, with, and this is a good opportunity to say, because in the lead role, well, there were 2 lead roles, but the Tom Hickey, who sadly died in the last month or so, one of his great performances, and another actor, long gone, Godfrey Quigley. But it was just one of those sensational opening nights where it was the very peak of Tom Murphy's career in a great career. And sure enough, it's a play that has been done again and again and again. And a friend of mine who I knew from Dramsoc days, who was actually a music scholar and had gone to Toronto. And I contacted him, you know, to say, and he was a fan of Tom Murphy's, by the way. His favorite play to that date was The Sanctuary Lamp by Tom Murphy. And I contacted him to, as in I wrote a letter, because again, it was before email and all this. I wrote him a letter. I made that effort. mainly so I could gloat about the fact that I had seen the opening night of, and now he wouldn't even get to see the production because it had had its run and it was gone. And I subsequently, and to this day, for example, recently when we were talking about Tom Hickey, which is why it's clear, I would have probably forgotten that I did that bit of gloating, but he said to me, yeah, I remember you, and you actually sent me the script. He said, it's one of the great regrets of my life that I did not see that first production of the Gaiety concert. He has seen it since, but you know, and you see it, you know. So I look back and I think of, and it's the kind of, and of course there is the mythologizing and things grow in the telling and all that sort of stuff, but it is a great thing to have through the generations. I remember as a young actor, not a young actor, a young director, hearing about productions from before my time in Dublin and before you know, and that you meet older actors or somebody who was there that night or who was in the production, and it's even in the kind of quality, that lovely idea that a first cast, when a play is published, the original cast is there, the original director, the people involved, and then you might meet these people 30 years later and say, oh yeah, you were in that, and they, you know, the anecdotes flow and all the rest of it. And it's that in a world in which we demand access to everything and we want to see everything and do everything, it is, I think, just a very special thing with theatre that you were either there or you were not.
Yeah, beautiful. So in your experience, you know, because you've had experience in a lot of different sides of theatre, but has there been any skills or anything that you've used in theatre that you find helpful in the rest of your life, in the non-theatre aspect of your life?
Yeah, well, my first answer would be absolutely nothing. Nothing. If the beauty of the skill of what you do, because, you know, but particularly, and it is my answer, the ultimate answer I'm about to give will be related to this. One of the unfortunate things about whatever skills I bring to theatre is one of controlling other people, of demanding things, of none of these are skills which are useful in real life. Or may well get someone arrested in real life, but are quite acceptable in the theatre. You know what I mean? No, sit there, sit on that line. Can you imagine in life? Yeah, come in, sit. No, sit. No, don't say anything. Before you say anything, sit. And then I will ask you what you want to drink, and then you will tell me.
And for some reason, I'm picturing you on a Dublin bus, exactly. Directing people.
Yes. That's right. It's like that fantastic story of it's a very old joke, I'm sure, of the fabulously wealthy man who had never been on a London bus. And he decided, I'm going to go on the bus. And his friend says, don't be ridiculous. You won't be able to cope with getting, oh, yes, I will. It's perfectly fine. He said, I'll have my change. I'll pay my money. It'll be fine. And so he waited at a bus stop, and the bus came along, and he got on, and he took out his money, and he said, 22 Huntingdon Gardens, please. Anyway, however, it is, I would have to say that where something, what has happened is that something that I've learned over the longer period in theatre has also been of tremendous help in real life, which is that exactly that kind of control element, which as a younger director, you know, in common with many more younger directors, especially of the male variety. No, actually, the women are just as bad, really, I have to say, when I think of some of our Irish directors. But that the control freakery, the almost fascistic nature of the way in which we think our vision of the play has to be realized, and can only be realized in the way we want to realize it, and the actors are there to be there. That obviously over the years, you know, that has softened, and I have learned to appreciate what actors bring to it. I've learned to realize that if I express myself in a slightly more, abstract or generalized way that it's then interesting to find out what it is happens, not just with the actors, but with a set designer or with I want a chair there at that, no, the window has to be there. The more you learn, to find out what other professionals can bring to it, and how it sparks an idea which you can then take credit for. Actually, that is a very useful thing when it comes to life and understanding that people don't always think the way you think. People don't always take your advice about something. People ring you looking for advice and then ignore it, and and you learn that that's all right. That's fine, actually. That's because that's what I do when people tell me what they think, and so is that so that constant evolving of working in theatre over the years and learning how to make things happen in a more collaborative way is certainly reflected or paralleled in one's own relationships. And I'm trying to think what doesn't change is because that sounds lovely. That sounds lovely in relation to how I've grown into a softer, gentler kind of director. But interestingly, when it comes to casting, and I'm trying to think of a parallel in real life with this, but that I still have people who I will never cast, even if I'm stretched on a rack, and because there's and clearly I'm never going to name names, but and actually because you don't necessarily know, you only know it when someone suggests. It's like
yes, no, I do know what you're saying. Yeah.
What about so and so? And just your head goes, no fucking way. And you go, oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Yes, and you write it down as though the name is part of your list. The whole meaning is going nowhere. So I'm trying to think: is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's certainly the one element that doesn't change. That doesn't change. And the final thing that's kind of related to that, which has always been the case, and is probably one of the reasons I've softened so much in relation to the collaborative aspect, is that, and this was interesting when I started writing, because I started out, I acted in drama, and then I started directing, but I always wanted to write, but the writing kind of emerged out of that. And the one thing I was glad to discover is that I loved writing for other people. The way, and it's really common now, and it kind of, where, people write stuff for themselves to act in, and they, and the world is just coming down now with comedians who are, writing films about being comedians, and all that, and obviously a lot of very good stuff, but it's weird. And I was always very glad to discover the opposite, that I wanted to write about other characters and other people, and I never would even think about wanting to be an actor in something I'd written. And one of the reasons for that is that I enjoy watching actors. I enjoy watching what it is they do, and how they set about it, and all the whole just to mention him again, because he's in my mind, like Tom Hickey. When I finally did get to work with Tom in the mid-90s, having seen him for so many years, I was just fascinated with how he worked, because it was just the strangest thing. And occasionally he hated people looking at his script because it was full of weird hieroglyphics and things. And it was but that's what it did for him, and the way he attacked a performance, and so all those things are fantastic, and that's a skill which I'm not sure. Is it a skill to enjoy watching actors? But anyway, to realize it and to make use of it, and to indulge in the pleasure of it. And I think more people especially actually, there's you know, this thing about my truth, and you know what I think, and the growing popularity of memoir and people revealing themselves and all this. I think if more people looked at other people and talked about other people, and as in not in a nasty, but you know what I mean, that there's interested in what other people did and how they behaved, if they people watched, you know what I mean, if they in whatever way they choose, that it is something that's slightly slipping away from the culture, actually. Is that, and as a director in the theatre, you can't, like, if you think about it, you can't direct in the theatre if you have a pair of headphones on and you're listening to a podcast while the rehearsal is going on, and then you know, if you take that as a kind of a literal example, or I often think, imagine if you think about, you're walking down Grafton Street. I've gone on to a completely different topic, really.
Fascinating, though.
It is about, you know, the great thing about working in theatre is that you are observing, you are looking. Most people who are doing the jobs, I mean, the actors have to get involved, but even the actors have to watch and listen to what other actors are doing and saying and how they're moving, and you know, so you know, just imagine if you were walking down Grafton Street and everybody coming up the road towards you, a book in their hands or a newspaper in their hands, and it would be just the weirdest thing. It would be kind of interesting as an image, but it would be just,
I was like, I could see that.
That's what people are doing. Yeah, exactly. And they're all walking along, and that's what they're doing. They're turning the pages and so. But that effectively is what is what it is now. Except it's phones, and they assume that somebody else is going to move aside and let them and do other things. So there is a whole thing going on with people now, and that theatre is you know, that is a skill in theatre which would be very important to transfer to life.
But can you tell us anything about what you're working on at the moment?
No, is the answer.
Fair enough.
I never do. I really avoid it. It's always, and I'll tell you one of the things that, no, first of all, it's pure superstition that, like, I would tell you if there was a date for an opening night, and I would tell you all about it and would flog it to you like mad and get it. But it's my old, like in Ireland when I was a child growing up, we were always taught not to be bigging yourself up, or not to be showing off about things and things like that. And this ended up in people kind of saying nothing about anything. You'd be afraid to let anyone know something in case they turn it on you later. And sadly, that's something I haven't wielded in myself. But I'm actually generally superstitious about. I'll put a hex on it if I talk about it before it is too. You know. So I don't know. I've told you I have a workshop coming up, and like, it's a workshop, but it's you know, it's God knows it's an excuse to get out. For a couple of days, you know, and so that's nice. So no, I won't. So, you're very generous listeners, and you're lovely to look at, because the two of you smiling away there in two cups.
We're enjoying ourselves, Gerry. It's all it is.
Yeah,
there's no right here.
I'd like that casting this in your head. You're saying, no, we won't ask him again.
Definitely put Gerry on the list.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And thank you so much to you, the audience, too, for joining us. Please like the video, please share, because we believe theatre makes life better. We look forward to seeing you next time on AboutFACE Theatre presents 5 Questions With. Until then.
If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and share. Thanks for watching.